There's a fair bit that's happened, and it's only as of the last 8 to 10 years where we've seen this sort of significant growth.
Welcome to the Sportsbiz Show. Today we have with us Mr. Nasser Hussain, CEO of Rugby India, the sole governing body for the sport in the country. He's been the former captain of the Indian Rugby team, who is now championing the growth of the sport across the nation. We spoke with him on expanding a niche sport in the country, along with the trials, tribulations, and opportunities that come with the same. Let's dive into it. To start off, I'd love to know your day-to-day operations at Rugby India.
So typical day for us at Rugby India would involve a lot of planning and engaging with our stakeholders and partners, both internal and external, especially during, I think, this period where there's a lot of uncertainty. So it's about reaching out and ensuring everyone's safe and well, and that things are still on course as they were planned earlier. So yeah, I think the approach is more proactive as opposed to reactive. At least that's the endeavor and intent.
When you talk about the sport of rugby though, how would you paint the current landscape in terms of just awareness for the sport and how many people know about the access and the places they can get access to the sport in India?
So in terms of, I think the footprint of the sport in the country, it has, there's been a massive change and a shift over the last decade, so to say. I think currently Rugby India is active across about 27 states for men's, women's and age grade rugby, which kind of covers 1/3 of the districts of the country. So there's a fairly wide reach, and as a sport or as a federation, where members of World Rugby, Asia Rugby, the Indian Olympic Association, Ministry of Sport, part of the school games, part of the university games, and kind of tick all the boxes there in terms of getting the recognitions or getting access to kids playing the sport. So yeah, there's a fair bit that's happened, and it's only as of the last 8 to 10 years where we've seen this sort of significant growth.
There's about 8,500 players that are also registered with the union, if I'm not wrong. So where are you drawing this pool of talent from? Is it in conjunction with the state federations and the national federations? And how do you sort of plan to increase and make that sustainable?
So, I mean, to start off with, the 8,500 that are registered online, and that's actually a platform that we've created in the last 18 months, where we want to get away from the usual paperwork and get into an online sort of database. So that's still a work in progress. There are a lot more players that are involved in the sport. So close to about 80,000 players registered and unregistered across the country. And like you rightly said, a lot of them are involved with our state associations and play for clubs and the districts. So yeah, so it is. I think what's been encouraging is how the sport's grown to the tier 2 cities and rural India, and mainly through our grassroots programs.
Is there sort of scope for more grassroots programs across pan India in a way to sort of sustain that talent? I mean, at the end, we always see sort of leagues develop for sports, but I feel the blueprint that's created for sports to sustain themselves is very important as well. What's your take on that, especially for rugby?
I mean, as a union, our focus has been on grassroots development. I mean, I think we only had a small pot of money, and we needed to decide if we put it towards development or towards our high performance and our national team. Unanimous decision from the board members that it should be towards the grassroots programs and development and kind of building a stronger foundation for the sport. So what we run is a Get Into Rugby program, which is a World Rugby initiative for mass participation. And that's a program we've been running for the last 5 years, and it has seen a significant growth year on year. I mean, last year, just in terms of numbers, we reached out to 215,000 players. So yeah, and that kind of pegged us at number one in Asia and number one in the world in terms of participation reach. So yeah, we're pretty pleased with that sort of growth. But having said that, I don't think numbers is a challenge for a country like us. It's more about the retention and sustainability and continuity of these players, and that's been our focus to ensure that all these players get an opportunity to continue playing, and there's a pathway for them to stay in the game.
Fair enough, absolutely. And on that note, what have been some of those challenges in taking such a niche sport to the market?
Well, every sport has its own challenges, and so do we. I think a couple of our sort of obstacles, how we see it, is one is the lack of awareness of the sport. I mean, it is a foreign sport, so to say, uh, where we've been focusing on trying to educate the masses. So training and education has been a key component of that. Visibility of the sport is probably the next, where you don't get much rugby on television. And that's something we're trying to address with World Rugby to see how we can get more rugby content on television and on other broadcast mediums. And I think the third would be infrastructure. So yeah, facilities for playing the sport. I mean, it's none other than a football field is what we require. And I mean, it's as of probably early this year, we didn't have a single dedicated rugby field in the country. But we're pleased to say that we've got, or we're in process of getting a couple. So one in Jammu and Kashmir, out of all places, has allotted a field for rugby. We're in talks with a couple of the other state governments to potentially allot a plot of land for the sport. And that, I think, will really spike the interest and growth in the game.
Wow, that's commendable. Looking forward to how that develops. Talking from a fan engagement standpoint, just to shift gears a little bit, at the beginning of COVID, the union was quite nimble. And I say that because there was a successful virtual event that was launched called the Try Series. What prompted that idea? And for the uninitiated, could you obviously tell us a little bit more about that?
So yeah, obviously once things went into lockdown, there was a sort of a lull, short lull period in our case at least, where there wasn't much happening. There was, like I said, a lot of uncertainty. We weren't aware of what or where we're heading. So yeah, it was a case of trying to identify what is it that a player or a fan would miss the most during this time, and that was being involved in competition or supporting a team in competition. And we tried to think of various ways of how we could sort of address that. And obviously, with the restrictions in place, the only thing that we kind of came up with was a virtual tournament. And then there were a lot of ideas thrown around as to how do we work it out. And the most feasible option was the one that we rolled out. And I mean, it was all, we weren't sure what to expect of it. But I mean, we were very, very pleased that it was really successful. I mean, we got massive sort of traction, a virtual online event, which was based on voting. So yeah, so it was, I think what was unique about it, but I mean, now looking back, was it wasn't just an initiative that benefited the association and the union, but it also benefited every team that participated in it, because it helped drive a lot of traffic onto their social media handles. We saw massive growth in followers, in the reach that we had, and so did all the teams. So it was a sort of a win-win situation for everybody.
Yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. And I'm sure that engaged a lot of people, especially when I was scrolling through the website and the social media handles. It just popped up everywhere. So I'm sure that was great. I also obviously want to talk a little bit about the integrity and compliance aspect, especially because rugby is an extreme contact sport. So injuries are a very natural part of the game. And I'm sure that could make a lot of kids or a lot of parents very apprehensive. So how is the union sort of taking care of providing enough facilities or enough knowledge about injury prevention or different aspects pertaining to sports science for the sport and for the participants?
So I think when we roll out rugby programs, I think the first sort of hurdle we need to get across is to break that perception that it is a dangerous sport. It is a contact sport, no doubt, but there are various measures taken or put in place to ensure it is safe. So we have a thing called Rugby Ready. So that's one of the programs that rolls in with the Get Into Rugby program, which kind of makes you rugby ready. So it teaches you how to fall, how to tackle, focuses on the safety aspects of the game. And that is a major component that is across all levels, not just at the grassroots, and something that's really being sort of instilled by World Rugby as well, that it needs to be a safe sport. And I mean, the sort of concerns of the stakeholders are valid, and rightly so. But yeah, it's about educating not just the players, but also the parents, the PE teachers, the fans who follow the game, about the measures that are taken this is from the on pitch perspective. So for the players, off the pitch, a lot of work being done on the medical side, so to provide appropriate pitch side care. So there are accreditation courses that are run by World Rugby. We've in India got a few medical educators as well, who are certified to run these programs. So those are ongoing sort of initiatives to ensure that we have the right people pitch side to, in case there is an incident, to deal with it in the right fashion.
The next round is sort of a quick rapid fire segment, just to get your thoughts on a few pertinent factors related to the sports industry. So the number one question is, what books would you recommend to become a better leader and a manager in the industry?
Something that's most important is dealing with people, and that is probably across every industry, not just sport. So I think one of the books is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Again, like I said, not just specific to sport, just in general, in business, in life, it's important to have those sort of skills where you're a people's person. And that's key to be a good manager.
3 skills you would recommend for a better career in the sports industry?
Interpersonal skills, forward planning, and problem solving.
And one word, according to you, that describes the Indian sports ecosystem today?
One word I would have used probably a few years ago would be unstructured, but now it's probably growing. It's a industry that's on the brink of booming, I would think.
Lastly, what is next for you for the union to build the sport from a mid to long-term perspective?
So like I said, our strategic focus has been grassroots. We've kind of done that for the last 5 years. I think we've reached a sort of juncture where we've spread ourselves, I think, wide enough. We've created quite a strong foundation, and now it's about trying to support our high performance. And we've been lucky to have managed to get partners like the Orissa government and Societe Generale, who've sort of committed to that vision and are looking at supporting a high performance program, trying to get to professional. So we probably one step at a time go semi-professional in 2021, where the players will get paid for playing and for their time and commitment, and then hopefully build upon that moving forward. So yeah, I think that's the next sort of step for Rugby India.
That's great. I look forward to that. But with that, it brings me to the end of my questions, and I just want to thank you for taking out the time to answer them so succinctly and thoughtfully. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ananya.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. At the Sportsbiz Show, the aim is to get you the best interviews, trends and tips from the world of sports business. It will be really helpful if you could subscribe and rate the podcast. This would go a long way in helping the show get discovered and add value to more sports biz enthusiasts and professionals like yourself. Please feel free to connect on LinkedIn or Instagram. Links will be in the description. Thank you, and until next time, keep the Josh high.